Welcome to the Fran Snyder Podcast, where I talk to artists and music fans to explore how music connects us through great stories and experiences. Brought to you by Listening Room Network. Today's guest, harpist Anne Roos. And we are live with Anne Roos. How are you today?
I'm great. How about you, Fran?
Great. It's great to reconnect. And you are in South Lake Tahoe, is that correct?
That's right. In California, just 7 miles from the Nevada border. So
Got it.
Up in the Sierras.
Yeah, it's funny. South Lake Tahoe is one of those border towns. I think one of the places I skied there, that you could ski the Nevada side or the California side. I think, was it Heavenly Valley, I think it's called?
Yes. Yeah. I could do both.
That lake is one of the most beautiful lakes I've ever seen from that lodge there. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's really gorgeous. Yeah.
So you've been out there a long time. Were you born and raised in that area, or?
No, I'm originally from Southern California. I'm a Valley girl.
Oh, wow. So how did you wind up there? Was it marriage or jobs or?
It was marriage. I met my husband. We were both teaching at the same public school, middle school in Los Angeles, and we both said we'd had enough.
Yeah.
And he was originally from Northern California, so we moved up here and stayed up here. So that's what happened. But I do go from time to time down to LA to visit the beaches and do Disneyland and then come home.
Gotcha. Well, one of the fun things about you is you're a little bit out of the ordinary in our network. You've not done a lot of touring, but you've had a lot of great success as an independent performer in your region, as well as through publishing and recording. And it's I'm looking forward to hearing sort of like the other side of the artist field that we don't hear much about from the others. One of the notable things that you've done, aside from playing on like several Grammy winning and nominated albums, you've had a book published by Hal Leonard. I guess we should first talk about the fact that there's a harp behind you. You are a harp player.
Yes, I'll turn it around so you can see it just a little better.
Yeah.
There we go. My friend.
There you go. That's another distinctive feature of you in our network. So you wrote a book that was published by Hal Leonard, which is pretty much the premier publisher for anything music related. Tell us about how that came about. What's the name of the book?
The name of the book is The Musician's Guide to Brides: How to Make Money Playing Weddings. So pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, and that's done well. How long ago was that published?
Oh, that was published like 2006, 2007. So it's well overdue for an update, a redo, because weddings have certainly changed since then. But a lot of the information, about putting together a contract and really how to discuss things with the bride and that type of client is still very pertinent.
I have a title suggestion for you. How about Harpzilla meets Bridezilla?
No. I'm very careful. I don't insult my clients. I never call them bridezillas or frankengrooms.
Nice, yeah. You could write the groom's guide to brides too. That might be helpful.
That I don't know that. I don't know that end of it. I only know it from the standpoint of client and musician.
Yeah. So let's stay on the wedding track for a second. I'm sure you had some interesting experiences, whether it be weddings. Mm-hmm. And I understand you've even played some proposals and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Can you share a story or two, some unusual stuff that would be fun?
I just, you could mention all the really crazy, nutty things that you see on like America's Funniest Home Video, and that kind of stuff happens, of course. But the stuff I like is the people who decide that they want to surprise their intended with harp music, because the bride or the groom may have no idea there's going to be harp music there. Right. And then there I am. And I'm playing something that, it's not recorded, so it's organically performed there, and it's music that they love. Mm-hmm. And it just always, it tugs on everybody's heartstrings. It's just those are my favorite performances to do when, there was one. This was my favorite all-time wedding. So this gentleman, he called me, he's a he was a car salesman. And he said, oh, I want to hire you. We're going to come out to Tahoe. We're going to get married. It's just myself and my bride-to-be and our adult children. So it's just a few of us. We're going to stand at the side of the lake and exchange vows. And so he hired me and he goes, oh, but by the way, I've not proposed to her yet.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, okay, he really must know what he's doing. And so I talked to the minister and he said, well, yeah, we'll just meet him out there and do our thing. And he thought it was really funny and unusual. And sure enough, they show up in the limousine. They're all wearing shorts and t-shirts and tennis shoes like they're going to go for a hike. And the minister hands the bride her bouquet and they exchange vows. And the look on her face was like, what is going on today? And, and then afterwards they toasted with champagne and cake. But it was so sweet. It wasn't about all the frills of the wedding and whether the colors match and all that. It was all just about a really important day and celebrating romance. Nice. And to be part of that, it gives me goosebumps just talking about it. I just love that.
And the ring bearer didn't trip into the bride and have her fall into the pool or anything like that.
No, there was no ring bearer at this one. I think maybe the groom just had the little extra, ring, or somebody else or one of the adult children who were in on it handed it to them. So no, it all went beautifully.
That's great. So one of the things we have to talk about, since this is the COVID era, pandemic era, somebody will be listening to this podcast 3 years from now and not know. So we have to sort of highlight it. So everybody's having to adjust. I'm curious, you do a lot of online lessons as well. Actually, just to backtrack for a second, you're not only dealing with local clients, right? Like Tahoe is like a wedding destination, right? So it seems like it's an ideal place for you to be doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And right now there's nothing. I mean, there is, but basically the people who are busy are the ministers, because people come up and they're just eloping and standing 6 feet away from each other and exchanging vows, or maybe with a few friends, and that's all. And there's no frills, there's no nothing else. You can imagine all the other, myself included, but all the other wedding service providers. And this is corporate jobs too, because, corporations would come up here and have their annual meetings or get-togethers, and I'd be playing for their cocktail hours before dinner. And so it wasn't just weddings. All of that's gone, for the most part. For me, I don't even know how many weddings by this point in the time in a year that I normally do. I mean, it's many dozens.
Yeah.
This month, I have my 4th wedding of the year. That's it. Yeah. So it's really severely impacted me.
My dad got married June 12th.
Oh, congratulations.
He's 88 years old.
Yay!
And so, it was one of those quiet weddings without a whole lot going on. A nice gathering nonetheless, with the masks and everything. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So then I'm assuming that your online lessons have been doing well to offset some of the live losses.
Yeah, well, I've been doing online lessons for years, before this happened. And because people were approaching me from other countries, living, like one of my students was living in Australian outback, no harpists, no harp teachers, no nothing. And he had a little harp. So people contacted me who couldn't find harp teachers where they were. And then when the pandemic happened, all of a sudden, all of these inquiries, they're bored at home and they're being gifted with an instrument and they have no idea what to do with it. Or they, out of a whim, they just always wanted to play the harp and now they have time. Mm-hmm. And they're buying a little harp, but they don't know how to play it. So my student load, my roster has really tripled at this point.
Wow,
comparatively.
That's great.
So thank God for that, because that's filling the hole from what I would be doing if it were, if I were playing at weddings and that kind of thing. So I'm really happy. I really love my students. It's fun.
And most of that stuff used to happen on Skype. Is everybody moving to Zoom now, or are you sticking with Skype for lessons?
Oh, no. Well, it started with Skype because that was like the teleconferencing software ages ago. And then Google Hangouts was there for a bit. but Mac people didn't really use that. So right now I go with what people are familiar with for lessons. So there's a number of people who like Zoom. There are people who do FaceTime, and then there are still people who do Skype. So those are the three big ones. But I have had people from outside of the country who like WhatsApp.
Okay.
Because they don't have roaming charges outside of the country. And I think some of these other ones, because they're not in the US or something, they're charged. I ask them what they want, what works. And sometimes we do something like we'll start with one and the connection isn't good or something. So we just go, okay, let's try another. So it's nice that there are a number of different ones that you can try. And because they're one-on-one, there's no charges.
That's
so
great.
It's not like Zoom, where if you go over 50 people, you've got to, or whatever the number is, you've got to pay some premium. There isn't any.
You've been able to adjust to whatever your clients need, which is great.
Very easily. I mean, I just sit like this, just sit at my desk, and here's the harp, and I demonstrate, and they demonstrate. We go back and forth, and it works really well.
I have two questions about the harp. Number one, I don't know if you can see my ukulele behind me.
I see your ukulele.
And that's not my main instrument. I'm a guitar player, but there are 4 sizes of the ukulele, and I've seen different sizes of harp. Are they named? Like, is it? Do you have a concert harp and a piccolo harp or whatever it might be? Like, are there strict categories for harp, or do they just vary in size?
Well, I haven't heard of a piccolo harp. I like that name, though. I'll remember it. Well, real small, they're called lap harps. Harp? Obviously you'll sit, they'll be on the lap. For purposes of learning to play the instrument, though, it's best to have something that's at least like 28, 29 strings. So a lap harp, that usually at that size, they're about half size harps, which would be placed on a stool or something like that. Anything larger, this one behind me is full-size Celtic harp, which is 38 strings. A concert harp is 47 strings. Concert harp has pedals, and that's what they use in the orchestra. And there's a total difference in how you play them. The best way I can describe is the way you play it is roughly the same across the board, but the difference is when you're shifting to different keys, you use pedals on the orchestra harp. On the Celtic harp, you have a system of levers up at the top.
Right. I've seen you play that. I saw you play Stairway to Heaven on it.
Yeah.
And you're reaching up and adjusting.
Accidentals, yeah.
So that means that the harp is not a chromatic instrument. You have to, is it set in a particular scale, or are you getting...
You set it in the scale that you want to play in. So that's what the levers do. That's what the pedals do. And then the levers and pedals will allow you to make for accidentals as they're needed. But a concert harpist can do that with their feet, and I have to do it with my hands. So the way I describe it is, it's like the difference between playing a stick shift in an automatic car. You drive them the same, but this is like the manual, the stick shift one, and the concert harp's like the automatic. So
with the concert harp, though, I'm sorry to go so deep. I'm just curious.
Okay.
It seems obvious to me with the Celtic harp that you have that you can reach up and flip a switch on all these different strings to change the key. It's hard for me to imagine how that would work with pedals, because you're not going to have 48 pedals, one for each string.
The pedals, you have one pedal for each note of the scale. So there's 7 pedals, and they have 3 positions. They have a sharp position, a natural position, and a flat position. So when you use a pedal, so let's say you have a B pedal, and you put it to the flat position, it's going to make all your B strings flat.
But on the Celtic, you have to hit each string, each B, you don't get them all in one shot. Got it.
So it's different thinking.
If you're enjoying this podcast, can you pause for a moment to like, review, and subscribe? Please help the world discover our music community and the wonderful artists that we support. Your feedback makes a real difference.
The funny thing is, when you see a pedal harpist playing a Celtic harp, they are stomping their feet going, oh yeah, it doesn't have any pedals. And then when you see a Celtic harpist playing a pedal harp, they're like, keep looking up. Wait a minute, I got to flip this. Oh no, I have to do that with my feet.
Yeah.
So,
And you might not know this, I don't know, 20 years ago, I don't know how far back it goes, but we started noticing basses with the same type of lever that you have on the Celtic harp, because the low string is an E on a bass, typical 4-string bass. And a lot of songs are in D, which robs you of that lowest note. And so they called it a hip shot. And basically you'd flip that switch and it would drop the E down to a D. And so it wasn't for accidentals. It was just to allow a bass player to have a low D to play along with a band that was playing in the key of D. So
that's cool.
I didn't know where that came from, but now I'm seeing your harp. I see, yeah, that's where they probably borrowed that technology from the harp.
I know they have some things called harp guitars or something, and I think they're just guitars with lots of strings. I don't know.
yeah, they're pretty amazing. Actually, the last interview I did was with Maya Wynn, and she plays the harp guitar, and essentially it's a guitar with a bass, but the bass is set up so that it's not frettable, so it's similar to the harp, where you have to put it in the intonation that you want, and you just reach up and hit a bass note when you want to. But the guitar section of it is like any normal guitar.
Okay.
So yeah, it's interesting. So it's fun to see the parallels between the harp, the guitar, and the harp guitar. That's great.
That's cool.
You said you've been working on a duet album. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I'm working with a flutist that I've known for years. Actually, the very first album I performed on was an album that I did with him back in the 90s. So a new age album with environmental sounds, and it was very cool. We've always been in touch, but we thought, hey, this is a good time to get back to this, and decided to do an album that it's in the new age genre, but originally we were thinking about holiday, but we are not into the jingle bells and the standard stuff. The direction it's going in is we're taking these really old Renaissance and early music types of pieces, folk music pieces from around the world that are holiday-ish, and they sound holiday, and we're putting like a new age spin on it. Okay. So it will be more of a winter themed album than anything else, but we're really happy with it because it's not classically taking these Renaissance and early pieces. It's putting a different spin on them. So we're having a lot of fun with it.
With all the live streaming going on, I noticed that you've embraced that as well, but you're doing thematic type shows. Tell me a little bit about some of the fun themes that you've been doing.
Well, the one so far that is most popular is called the Insomniac Harp Music Time Concert. And that basically, here on the Pacific Coast, I turn on the camera at 11 p.m. But on the East Coast, obviously, that's going to be a lot later, which is more insomniac time for people in other parts of the country. So live stream, they can come in and listen. But I'm playing soothing music, but I have a friend of mine who published a book called Everyday Soul Dances, which has meditations in it. And so she's writing specific meditations, new meditations that I'm using in this. So I'm reading the meditation and then playing the harp music.
You're doing both at the same time? You're reading and playing at the same time?
No. So here's the meditation, and I read it, and then I go, okay, I'm going to go ahead into the music. There's visualizations in the meditation, so they can use the music to visualize. So I'm making it available to my patrons on Patreon so that they can listen to it on replay. So like, for instance, my brother, he likes tuning into it after a really hectic day at work. So he may not be listening to it at that time, but he's still tuning in. So it's been pretty popular, and the people with the upper tiers of my Patreon membership, I send them an email with the actual meditation written in there so they can use that later.
That's great. I understand you've been jamming with other people doing their live stream. Tell me a little bit about that. That's a fun twist on it.
Instead of just statically watching somebody else performing, I just pull up the harp and I sit there and I improvise along. I just jam along. Nobody else is listening. I'm just having a good time with it. But for me, it's just like I so miss having that opportunity to improvise with other musicians and jam with other musicians live. So this allows me to continue to do that. I mean, I know that it's missing that ability of having that nice mix and being live in the room with them. But it allows me to continue to keep those chops. And it's fun.
You could technically live stream yourself playing to somebody else's live stream.
I guess I could. It would involve some timing, some planning ahead, I guess, because there's this latency time delay business that you've got to deal with too.
Well, not really, because I mean, you're playing real time with what you're hearing.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So you would just have to have another setup recording what you're doing.
That's right. So. Another theme. I'm live streaming with this person in live stream. I'd have to okay it with them, but
of course.
Would be interesting. That'd be interesting.
And so outside of the music world, you got a couple things. You mentioned you're a foodie. You love the food podcasts.
Yeah. They're just fun. I just like that. My husband loves baking. In fact, one of the live streams I do is called Harp Music Sunday in the Bake Shop. And basically, we're in the kitchen. I have the harp in the kitchen. And like this last weekend, he baked s'mores bark. It was cool because, you didn't need a campfire. It's just, melting chocolate on the double boiler on the stove. So he's discussing how to do it. And so in the background, I'm playing Light My Fire on the harp,
Nice.
And the people watching think it's pretty campy and fun.
That's great. And so many people, myself included, during this time of not going out to dinner, everybody's brushing up on their cooking skills. So I imagine those food podcasts and food shows are doing extremely well.
They are doing really well. But I just, it's not like I have to be sitting there taking notes. So it's not like this big intellectual thing. It's not politics and it's not COVID and all of that other stuff. It's just food. It's nice to have that listen.
It's also interesting to me that you've got a background in martial arts that you sort of maintain. Mm-hmm. Tell me about how long ago you got into it. Has it been a lifelong thing, or just tell me that story.
Many years ago. So when did I start? Maybe maybe 20, 25 years ago or something. Just out of the interest of feeling that as a musician, particularly as a musician, you're a female musician, you're all dressed up to the nines and you're out performing solo on your own. And you're in some dicey situations sometimes. And so I thought, it'd be good to learn some self-defense. So I got into that. It's fun. It's good exercise. It's all of the above.
You can't swing a harp at somebody for self-defense like you can with a guitar.
I wouldn't, although I jokingly tell people I could use it as, I can shoot arrows with it. So.
Nice. And so was there a particular martial art that you focused on?
I do Kyusho-jitsu, which is pressure point self-defense. And it's based on using acupuncture points, but not for healing.
So this is the thing where you could grab somebody by the wrist and make them buckle down, make their knees buckle, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
I always thought that was a superpower in the Kung Fu films that I saw.
Or like Vulcan mind, what do they call it? The Vulcan hold or something.
Yeah.
They go down, it's like, I wonder what points they're using.
Exactly. Well, Anne, this has been really fun. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. We'll be sharing this with our community and more widely as well. Good luck to you in South Lake Tahoe. And if you're listening out there and you want an amazing harp player for your wedding or your significant event, Anne Roos will go anywhere if you buy her a plane ticket and help her package up her harp.
I do it virtually too, so that's okay too. Some people are just doing the virtual wedding thing, and that's okay too.
That's great.
I could do that.
All right, Anne Roos, everybody. Take care. We'll talk again soon.
Bye. Thank you, Fran.
Thanks for listening to the Fran Snyder Podcast. Please subscribe, like, or share to help your friends discover our community. Also, I'd love to hear from you with any feedback or suggestions that you have. You can email me at fran@listeningroomnetwork.com. Fran Snyder Podcast, brought to you by Listening Room Network and TrueFire.com. Learn, practice, play.